The rural mornings on Marcus Reed's ranch always carried a stillness that felt like time slowed down. The sound of cattle lowing in the distance, the rustle of wind through the tall prairie grass, and the steady creak of his wooden porch swing were his comfort. Marcus had spent years working for everything he owned: miles of open land, a modest but sturdy ranch house, and a quiet life he had fought hard to protect. But peace had been in short supply ever since the local HOA decided his property, which sat right on the border of their sprawling development, was an eyesore that needed to be brought under control. It started small, like most harassment does. Letters stuffed into his mailbox with phrases like, "Your property doesn't meet the community standard," or, "Failure to comply may result in fines." Marcus would toss them in the trash, because their HOA had no legal authority over his land. His ranch wasn't part of their development. It was family land, 100 acres his grandfather had fought to hold onto when corporations and developers tried to take it. Yet somehow, that didn't stop the so-called HOA Security Patrol, men who dressed in knockoff uniforms and slapped magnetic police-looking decals on their trucks, from driving past his property, eyeing him like criminals do a target. At first, Marcus ignored them. He had survived far worse in his lifetime. But then the harassment took a sharper turn. The first mailbox was hit on a Tuesday morning. Marcus had walked out to check the mail, only to find the wooden post splintered in two, the box itself bent and crushed like an empty soda can. Tire tracks were fresh in the dirt, leading right back to the paved road where the HOA trucks often passed. He replaced it, thinking maybe it was an accident. Maybe one of them had swerved, maybe some kid was joyriding. He gave them the benefit of the doubt. But then it happened again. And again. Each time he put up a new one, it was smashed by the end of the week. The third time, he found red paint streaked across the dented metal, matching the exact shade of the patrol sub that often lurked nearby. That's when it stopped being an accident in Marcus's mind. That's when it became war. Neighbors whispered about it too. Some of the older ranchers up the road had seen the HOA trucks deliberately veer toward Marcus's mailbox, laughing as they sped off. "They're trying to push you out," one of them said grimly over coffee. "They want your land. They've been buying up every acre they can." Marcus just nodded, his jaw tight. They wanted him rattled. They wanted him angry enough to lash out so they could call the sheriff and paint him as the aggressor. He wasn't about to give them that satisfaction. No. Marcus had a better idea. When he was younger, Marcus had worked in construction and welding before turning to ranching full-time. He knew his way around steel and concrete. He knew how to make things that lasted. And if those fake cops wanted to keep ramming his mailbox, he'd give them something they'd never forget. He spent 2 evenings in his barn, sparks flying as the grinder bit into steel pipes, the smell of hot metal filling the air. He welded together a frame out of thick rebar and reinforced plate steel, heavy enough to stop a truck if it had to. Then he poured a deep footing of concrete, nearly 4 feet into the ground, setting the frame inside like a fortress. By the time he bolted the new mailbox onto it, the thing looked ordinary enough from the outside: fresh paint, a reflective number, nothing suspicious at first glance. But beneath that shiny exterior was an immovable wall of steel and concrete. Marcus leaned on his shovel that night, staring at his creation with a satisfied smirk. "Run over this one," he muttered. For a week, nothing happened. The HOA patrol trucks slowed when they passed, the drivers squinting at the new mailbox, but none made a move. Marcus figured maybe they had finally gotten the message. Maybe they realized he wasn't going to be pushed around. He enjoyed that week of peace. But on the 8th night, the roar of an engine woke him from his sleep. Headlights cut across his curtains as a truck barreled down the road. Marcus rose from bed, pulling the curtain back just in time to see the red SUV swerve hard toward his mailbox. He didn't even bother grabbing his boots. He knew what was about to happen. The impact was like a cannon blast. A shriek of metal, the crunch of glass, the violent slam of steel stopping several tons of moving vehicle dead in its tracks. Marcus walked out onto his porch, arms crossed, watching smoke curl from the crumpled hood of the SUV now wrapped around his mailbox. The mailbox itself stood perfectly straight, unbothered, while the HOA cops bumper hung in tatters, radiator fluid leaking into the dirt. The driver stumbled out, dazed and cursing, clutching his forehead where it had smacked the steering wheel. He kicked the mailbox in frustration, only to wince in pain when his boot connected with the steel core hidden inside. From the porch, Marcus let out a low chuckle. "You boys don't learn, do you?" he called out. His deep voice carried across the night air like a warning bell. The man froze, whipping his head toward Marcus. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, just the sound of the truck's engine hissing as it bled out its fluids. Then the driver scrambled back into the vehicle, tried to start it, and failed. The engine coughed once, then died completely. With no choice, the man grabbed his phone, muttering angrily as he limped down the road. Marcus stood there until the man was gone, then turned back inside. His work was done. He didn't need to chase them, didn't need to fight them with fists or threats. He had built something stronger than their arrogance. And now, every time those fake cops drove past, they'd be reminded of the night their little game backfired. Marcus knew this wasn't the end. The wall wasn't going to stop with just a wrecked SUV. But as he settled back into bed, he smiled to himself. For the first time in months, he felt like the land was on his side again. And if they thought a mailbox was the only trick he had up his sleeve, they were in for a rude awakening.